He moved heroin through pizza ovens and turned neighborhood cafés into billion-dollar drug pipelines, all while the FBI listened to every word. If you love stories where organized crime meets federal investigation, make sure to follow, because this is the case that changed everything. Queens, New York, November 1980. 300 guests crowd into the Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue. The wedding reception celebrates the daughter of Giuseppe Bono, owner of a small pizza shop in Jamaica, Queens. White tablecloths, champagne glasses. Photographers hired by the family capture every moment. In the photographs, men in expensive suits stand together, hands clasped, faces stern. They come from Sicily, Milan, New York, New Jersey. Some flew in from Europe. Others drove from Illinois and Wisconsin. The Drug Enforcement Administration later issues a subpoena for those photographs. Agents spend hours cutting out individual headshots, reprinting them, sharing them with law enforcement agencies across 2 continents. The wedding album becomes a directory of international organized crime. Giuseppe Bono, the host, is the head of a Sicilian Mafia family that relocated to Milan. His guest list reads like a roster of the world's most powerful drug traffickers. February 1980. FBI New York Office. Special Agent Joe Pistone, known undercover as Donnie Brasco, has infiltrated the Bonanno crime family. His intelligence reports mention a crew of Sicilian immigrants operating under Bonanno protection. They speak only Sicilian dialect. They keep to themselves. They own bakeries and pizza parlors along Knickerbocker Avenue in Brooklyn, the ancestral territory of the Bonanno family. The FBI opens an investigation into Salvatore Catalano, an Italian baker from Sicily. Catalano runs the Catalano Brothers Bakery. He also owns San Giuseppe Pizza. FBI analysts dust off an old computer system called CTNF, originally designed to track gambling operations in the 1970s. They adapt it to analyze telephone toll records. Patterns emerge, numbers called repeatedly. Payphones, long-distance connections to Sicily, Turkey, Switzerland, Brazil. 3 Bonanno capos are murdered. The family erupts into internal war. FBI New York responds by linking all Bonanno family investigations under a single code word, genus. The Catalano investigation is renamed Genus Cattails. It is reclassified as a RICO matter, Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the tool the FBI uses to dismantle entire criminal enterprises, not just individual criminals. FBI surveillance teams establish a fixed position overlooking Catalano's bakery. The lookout is in the attic of an old home on the main street. The owner of the home, a local businessman who recently won a contract to produce ductwork for U.S. Navy battleships, agrees to help. Inside the attic, old cue cards from The Tonight Show are stapled to the rafters. Johnny Carson's monologues from early episodes filmed in New York City. Agents pass hours reading them while watching through cameras. One camera points at the bakery. Another points at the front door of a residence around the corner. The residence belongs to Giuseppe Ganci, Catalano's partner. Ganci runs the Al Dente Pizzeria on Queens Boulevard. Video feeds from both locations run into the attic. Agents watch. They record license plates. They photograph everyone who enters and exits. NYPD Brooklyn North Narcotics Division runs an undercover operation targeting drug activity at Italian cafes in Brooklyn. Surveillance units notice other surveillance units in the neighborhood. A meeting is arranged at One Police Plaza, NYPD headquarters. FBI agents and NYPD commanders sit down. Both agencies realize they are investigating the same organization. They agree to join forces. The Drug Enforcement Administration contributes intelligence personnel. DEA's Unified Intelligence Division identifies the Sicilian Mafia members operating between New York and Italy. U.S. Customs joins the effort. The investigation expands. A conference convenes at the Officers Club. Representatives from FBI field offices in New York, Newark, Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, Springfield, and Milwaukee attend. DEA agents, U.S. Customs agents, ATF agents, FBI and DEA headquarters officials. Each office presents information on Sicilian organized crime members in their jurisdictions. The scope becomes clear. This is not a New York operation. Pizza parlors in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, and Wisconsin are all connected. Morphine base comes from Turkey. It is processed into heroin in Sicily. The heroin is smuggled into the United States through multiple entry points. Pizza shops and cafés serve as distribution fronts. The cash flows back to Europe through Swiss banks, Italian brokerages, and wire transfers. FBI agents submit a 101-page affidavit for court approval to intercept phone calls. The affidavit documents years of surveillance, toll record analysis, and intelligence from multiple agencies. Federal judges approve the wiretaps. Agents tap phones in New York, Newark, Philadelphia, Chicago, Springfield, and Milwaukee. The FBI faces an immediate problem. The subjects speak Sicilian dialect, not standard Italian. They use coded phrases. They use inflections in their speech as additional code. The FBI recruits translators. A former housewife from the New York office who speaks several languages. A special clerk fluent in the dialect. DEA contributes agents who speak Sicilian. NYPD contributes detectives. Legate Rome, the FBI's legal attaché office in Rome, obtains assistance from Italian National Police. Italian prosecutors begin sharing information. Intercepted calls reveal discussions of shipments, payments, and meetings. Surveillance teams follow subjects to Italian cafés. The cafés are social gathering places. Men read Italian newspapers. They play cards. High-stakes poker games move from café to café. Sicilian loan sharks operate openly, lending money as a recruitment tool. The loan recipients become couriers, money launderers, and distributors. Agents trace calls to pay phones across Queens and Long Island. The subjects never use the same phone twice in a row. They rotate between dozens of public telephones. FBI technical agents work around the clock to identify which phone will receive the next call. Prepare new affidavits, rush them to FBI headquarters for review, and install intercept equipment before the next scheduled call. Intercepted conversations reference an unnamed person. Clues point to Gaetano Badalamenti, former boss of bosses of the Sicilian Mafia. Badalamenti was present at the Palermo Mafia meeting of 1957. He ran his own family in Cinisi, Sicily, just outside Palermo Airport. In 1978, Badalamenti was deposed as head of the Cupola, the Sicilian equivalent of the American Mafia Commission. Internal warfare forced him into hiding. He became a marked man. Italian newspapers report his movements occasionally, but his exact location remains unknown. FBI agents share their suspicions with Legate Rome. Legate Rome contacts Italian authorities. Nino Cassara, a young investigative magistrate working under Giovanni Falcone, flies to New York. Cassara meets with agents in the wire room. He listens to recorded conversations. He cannot believe what he hears. The former Sicilian boss of bosses is being intercepted on telephone lines in New York City. Cassara tries his first hamburger. It does not meet his expectations. He spends hours in the wire room listening, confirming identities. 2 years later, in August 1985, Cassara and his security detail are assassinated by the Sicilian Mafia in front of his home in Palermo. The intercepted calls suggest that Badalamenti is planning a major shipment. Hints dropped in coded conversations lead investigators to believe Badalamenti is in Brazil. U.S. subjects receive calls at public telephone booths in Queens and Long Island. The subjects use coded phrases to designate which telephone number will be used for prearranged calls. FBI team members break the codes. Affidavits are prepared and hand-carried to FBI headquarters for review within 48 hours. Technical agents work to capture each conversation from overseas locations to pay phones. They attempt to trace the origin of each call. Tech agents narrow the origin to a bank of payphones in a post office in Rio de Janeiro. FBI agents are dispatched to Rio. They coordinate with local agencies to arrest Badalamenti during a call to U.S. subjects. At the prearranged time, Badalamenti places his call. Agents in Rio cannot locate him among the crowds at the post office. Badalamenti vanishes again. During another intercepted call, Badalamenti indicates he has relocated. He instructs his nephew, Pietro Alfano, to travel to Madrid, Spain. Alfano owns a pizza shop in Oregon, Illinois. He follows his uncle's instructions. On April 6, 1984, Chicago FBI agents surveil Alfano from his residence in Oregon, Illinois, to O'Hare Airport. He boards a KLM flight to Madrid. New York FBI scrambles to send several agents to Madrid. Madrid falls under the jurisdiction of Legat Paris. DEA maintains an attaché office in Madrid. The DEA country attaché coordinates with Spanish National Police. Spanish police identify Alfano upon his arrival. He retrieves his luggage. One of Badalamenti's sons meets him. The two jump into a taxi. Spanish police follow the taxi to a high-rise apartment building in a residential area of Madrid. Alfano and Badalamenti's son enter the building. Police lose visual contact. Officers set up surveillance on the building. They wait. Alfano and an older individual step out of the building. They walk toward a local bakery. Spanish police move in. Deputy Chief Jose Marino takes the two into custody. During questioning, Badalamenti denies his identity. He claims his name is Paulo Alves Balboa. Alfano denies knowing his uncle. He tells Marino he is staying at a hotel but cannot identify which one. Spanish officers locate Badalamenti's apartment. They arrest Badalamenti's wife and his son Vito, who had met Alfano at the airport. Both deny any connection to the older Badalamenti. Plans and briefings are developed for coordinated arrests across the United States. Agents prepare search warrants for residences and businesses. At approximately 11 a.m., FBI headquarters calls New York. Badalamenti and Alfano have been arrested by Spanish police. The arrests are the signal. The takedown is scheduled for early the next morning. A co-conspirator arrives from Italy. Surveillance identifies him as a suspected money courier between U.S. subjects and contacts in Italy. Several New York subjects drop him off at the Alitalia terminal at JFK Airport. He clears security. He walks up the jetway to the plane. FBI agents and NYPD detectives move in. They arrest him on the jetway. They hustle him down the stairway into a waiting vehicle. He is carrying a sum of U.S. currency, Italian lira, and a list of paid telephone numbers for prearranged calls. FBI agents span out across multiple field divisions: New York, Newark, Philadelphia, Chicago, Springfield, Milwaukee. They execute coordinated arrests and search warrants. Legions of federal agents swarm homes and pizzerias. They find guns, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, drug paraphernalia, documents. Among those arrested is Salvatore Toto Catalano, owner of the Catalano Brothers Bakery and San Giuseppe Pizza in Queens. Catalano is a major figure in the Bonanno Mafia family. He is Badalamenti's primary contact in the United States. He leads the American Crew, a group of Sicilian immigrants known as the Zips. Catalano is arrested in Brooklyn. He is arraigned in U.S. District Court in Manhattan. Bail is set at $5 million. Federal authorities announce charges against 31 men. The indictment alleges an organized crime ring that brought heroin worth over $1.5 billion into the United States. The affidavit used for the arrests has grown to 660 pages. The press nicknames the case the Pizza Connection. A 12-count indictment is filed, charging 38 defendants with conspiracy to distribute heroin, violation of Title 21 U.S.C. Section 846. 10 defendants are charged with operating a continuing criminal enterprise for the distribution of narcotics. Additional superseding indictments follow, charging currency violations, violations of bank secrecy laws, and causing false statements to be made in connection with currency transaction reports filed by financial institutions. Rudolph Giuliani is appointed U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He comes from the position of Associate Attorney General at the Department of Justice. technically a demotion. But the Southern District of New York is the most prestigious U.S. Attorney's office in the country. Giuliani's appointment coincides with the FBI's coordinated prosecutions of organized crime in New York City. His presence becomes critical to the success of the Pizza Connection case. The prosecution team continues investigating. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Louis Freeh, Richard Martin, Robert Stewart, and Robert Bucknam lead the effort. Freeh is tireless. He pushes the case forward. He directs the ultimate prosecution. This case will shape him into the future director of the FBI. Potential. Witnesses are identified in Italy, Canada, Turkey, and Spain. Fingerprint evidence is located. Records of wire transactions are gathered. Video recorded interrogatories are conducted. Designated special masters for the Southern District of New York oversee questioning of indicted defendants in the custody of foreign governments. Interrogatories take place in Switzerland and Italy. These video interrogatories will be introduced at trial. Between 1980 and 1983, over $60 million in used $5, $10, and $20 bills are smuggled from New York to Switzerland, Italy, and Turkey. Cash is sent by wire transfers, through brokerage accounts at E.F. Hutton and Merrill Lynch, and through business fronts operated by Mafia members overseas. Several cash transfers are made through Swiss Airways. Samsonite suitcases full of cash are handed to the Swiss Air Station manager. Between July and December of 1980, 1 metric ton of cash is sent out of the United States. Over $17 million of this goes to a Turkish supplier of morphine base. The supplier provides the network with 3,900 pounds of morphine base. A DEA undercover agent makes contact with a pizza shop owner in Philadelphia. The joint FBI-DEA investigation works up the chain from the shop owner. The undercover agent negotiates a small purchase of heroin. The shop owner reaches out to his suppliers in New York and New Jersey. The undercover agent negotiates 2 additional kilogram purchases of heroin. Surveillance coverage in Philadelphia, New York, and Newark determines that the heroin purchased in Philadelphia is supplied by subjects in New York and Newark. The connection is confirmed. The Pizza Connection trial commences in the large ceremonial courtroom. Judge Pierre N. Laval presides. 22 defendants begin the trial. All are Sicilian-born men. 2 full juries are empaneled to hear the evidence. An anonymous jury, shielded from public identification for their safety. The courtroom is packed. Defendants and their lawyers fill the space. The prosecution team includes Richard Martin, Louis Freeh, Robert Stewart, and Robert Bucknam. The government presents its case over 16 grueling months. Hours of intercepted conversations from 93 Title III wiretaps conducted across the country are introduced into evidence. Unemployed actors are recruited to read the conversations into the record. They perform the roles of the conspirators, reading transcripts in place of members of the prosecution team. The jury listens to coded phrases. Shirts means kilograms of heroin. Suits means large quantities. Acorns refers to small units. Intercepted calls are supported by surveillance testimony from police officers from Spain and Italy. NYPD detectives testify. Surveillance agents from New York, Newark, Philadelphia, Chicago, Springfield, Milwaukee, and Detroit take the stand. The government calls 300 witnesses. 12 foreign depositions are introduced. Joe Pistone, the undercover agent known as Donnie Brasco, testifies. 3 accomplice witnesses testify, including 2 pentiti, Italian Mafia turncoats, who are the first to cooperate with Italian prosecutors. They are lent to the United States to testify in this trial. 2 men plead guilty to lesser charges during the trial. 1 defendant is brutally murdered, likely a victim of friction between Catalano and Badalamenti factions. Pietro Alfano, Badalamenti's nephew, is shot and nearly killed in retaliation. By the time the jury delivers its verdict, 19 defendants remain. While the Pizza Connection trial proceeds in New York, Italian authorities commence the Maxi trial in Palermo. Giovanni Falcone is the lead prosecutor. 474 defendants stand accused. The trial is held in a specially constructed bunker courthouse. Falcone uses evidence developed during the U.S. investigation. He introduces the affidavit from the U.S. and the indictments of American subjects. Falcone has traveled to the United States and met with Rudolph Giuliani, Louis Freeh, and other members of the prosecution team. The Maxi trial ends on December 16, 1987, with the conviction of 360 defendants. Giovanni Falcone, his wife, and 3 members of his security detail are killed by a Mafia roadside bomb in May 1992 while traveling from Palermo Airport. After 16 months of testimony, the prosecution delivers its summation. Louis Freeh presents the first part. Richard Martin delivers the final summation. Martin describes the heart of the case. It's money and it's drugs. The prosecution argues that the defendants operated an international mafia ring that smuggled heroin processed in Sicily from morphine purchased in Turkey and Southwest Asia and cocaine from South America. The drugs were distributed through independently owned pizza parlors. The money was laundered through banks and brokerages in the United States and overseas. Defense attorneys present their summations. They argue that the government has failed to prove conspiracy. They argue that phone conversations were misinterpreted. They argue that their clients are legitimate businessmen. The jury receives instructions from Judge Pierre Laval. 17 months after the trial began, the case goes to the jury for deliberation. The jury delivers its verdict. 18 of the 19 defendants are convicted. Vito Badalamenti, the 29-year-old son of Gaetano Badalamenti, is acquitted of all charges. Among those convicted are Gaetano Badalamenti, the former boss of bosses of the Sicilian Mafia, and Salvatore Catalano, the head of the American crew. The convictions cover conspiracy to distribute heroin, operating a continuing criminal enterprise, and money laundering. The courtroom is silent as the verdict is read. Defendants show no emotion. Their lawyers prepare appeals. Judge Pierre Laval hands down sentences. 5 defendants receive 45 years in federal prison. Gaetano Badalamenti is sentenced to 45 years. Salvatore Catalano is sentenced to 45 years. The remaining 13 convicted defendants receive sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. Catalano shows no reaction. He is 46 years old. Badalamenti is 63. Both men will die in prison. Badalamenti dies in 2004 at age 80 while serving his sentence. Catalano serves his full term and is released in 2013. From January 1975 until April 1984, the Pizza Connection smuggled an estimated 1,750 pounds of heroin into the United States. The enterprise imported heroin worth over $1.5 billion. The heroin was sold through pizza parlors, cafés, and restaurants in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Wisconsin. The operation involved purchasing morphine base from suppliers in Turkey, processing it into heroin in Sicily, smuggling it into the United States, and distributing it through mafia-controlled businesses. Cash profits were laundered through Swiss banks, Italian brokerages, and wire transfers. The retail value of the heroin sold was estimated at several $billion. The Pizza Connection was the FBI's first major transnational criminal enterprise investigation after receiving concurrent jurisdiction to investigate narcotics violations in 1982. The case demonstrated that the FBI could apply the investigative techniques developed for organized crime cases to international drug trafficking. The use of the RICO statute, long-term surveillance, undercover operations, wiretaps, and multi-agency cooperation became the blueprint for future investigations. The case strengthened partnerships between the FBI, DEA, U.S. Customs, NYPD, and international law enforcement agencies in Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Turkey, Brazil, Canada, Great Britain and Germany. It paved the way for the expansion of the FBI's network of legal attaché offices. These offices became vital in addressing global threats, including terrorism and cybercrime. The trial itself set records. At 16 months, it remains one of the longest criminal jury trials in United States history. The prosecution introduced evidence from 4 continents. Translators worked around the clock to convert Sicilian dialect and coded phrases into English. The case files filled entire rooms. The affidavit grew from 101 pages to 660 pages. 300 witnesses testified. 93 Title III wiretaps were executed across 6 FBI field divisions. The surveillance operation involved teams working around the clock in multiple countries. Louis Freeh, one of the lead prosecutors, later became director of the FBI. He called the Pizza Connection the FBI's first major transnational criminal enterprise investigation and prosecution, and a historic turning point for international police cooperation and coordinated enforcement action. The case established the framework for the FBI's counterterrorism program on a global scale. Within hours, the seized drugs were logged into evidence. The cash was counted. The guns were catalogued. The photographs from Giuseppe Bono's wedding reception at the Pierre Hotel were spread across conference tables. Investigators matched faces to names, names to organizations, organizations to countries. Pizza ovens that had baked heroin into bread dough were dismantled. Cafés where millions of dollars changed hands over espresso were closed. Payphones that had connected Sicily to Brooklyn went silent. The blood was washed from the streets where informants and conspirators had been murdered. But the pipeline was broken.